Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about recycling bottles and jars, as if I've never done this before, but just to give you a little bit more information and some other ideas that you can use. So here's a green olive jar that's got some of my own homegrown marshmallow root that is vacuum sealed in there. Here is a jar of, I get these from Misfits Market. I love these particular artichoke hearts. Well, that's not what's in here, but right now I have some ginger in this. Now this I could easily vacuum seal, but this is a jar that I keep in my pantry right here. One of the reasons I've been getting these is not just because I enjoy these so much, but so I could have these jars, because I love the look of the lid and I can write on the top because it's light enough. And then I just use this as the spice jars that I keep here in my kitchen rather than the little half pint jars that I was using. These hold a little bit more without taking up much more room in my kitchen pantry. So I love those for that. And then here are, years ago, we were mostly buying them, not just because they were good, but because of the jars that we could get from Costco with the peaches in them. And we bought a few packages of these. And then as we worked through the peaches, I then recycled these jars for more things that I keep in the pantry where I go through more of them, such as seeds and so on. It's in the same pantry. Some of them I store this way, some of them I store upright. So I've got a lot of these that I've used, but again, I could vacuum seal these as well. Then some other examples would be reusing the almond oil and avocado oil chosen foods bottles for storing vinegars and homemade wine. They're great for that because they have a nice tight fitting lid. You just put that on there. I don't have to cork it, and it keeps it very well. I've got Fever Tree bottles. So this is a soda that you can get. The particular ones I was getting were the ginger beer, which is not alcoholic. It's just what it's called. They have ginger ale and ginger beer. I like the ginger beer best because it had a stronger ginger flavor. And I was getting them from Misfits Market when they'd have them in and have a good price on them. And then just enjoy them and then recycle the bottles for all kinds of things. I store flavored extracts in some. I've given some away with my homemade vanilla extract in. This is my herb infused oil that's more for skin. And this is the arnica and comfrey infused oil that I had infusing for maybe up to 2 years. So it got nice and dark. So this is great for muscle, joints, and much more. When I was buying the maple syrup in bottles like this, I have quite a few of these I saved up, and then this one has muscle rub in it. So this is the same oil after I've added some essential oils to it. And then right here, this is my homemade spruce tip syrup. So, and then I also have recycled these same bottles for other things, for more flavored extracts. Like I think my raspberry and my pineapple and my orange and my lemon are all in bottles like that. So there's just a few ideas. There's so many things you can use recycled jars for. And just to let you know, there are some people that even use them for canning, because in some countries, getting canning jars are extremely expensive, or they have no access to them at all. But they can use their store-bought jars as long as the lids are still in really great condition. I mean, the stuff was canned with in the first place, and then they just can their sauces, soups, and whatever it is they're putting up in those jars, and I've had great success doing that for years. I'm not necessarily recommending that, so if you're a canning Nazi, don't get all fired up at me about it, but I do think there's a lot of fear-mongering going on over things that people have been doing for many years, and that is one of them. So look into that for yourself and make that choice for yourself based on what you can do. Now, I personally do not use them for canning. I do use them for vacuum sealing, and I do have a lot of jars of nuts and seeds vacuum sealed in jars like this. Now, I have a lot more canning jars than I do jars like this, so you're going to see me putting up a lot of foods like these walnuts back here. I got these the same time I got the almonds, and I got them all vacuum sealed in just regular quart canning jars because we have been blessed over the years to be given all kinds of jars, or bought them really cheap at garage sales. So I have a ton, and my goal is this year is to get all the ones in the house filled up with food of some kind. So right there, vacuum sealing the vacuum sealed walnuts, and those, by the way, are the best walnuts I have ever had, and just my personal opinion. So if you're interested in looking into Azure Standard and you haven't, please go through our link, because that really helps us out. Only though if you order $100 or more, but you can still go through that link even if you can't afford to order that much. But yes, I highly recommend their walnuts and their almonds, and I've bought other nuts and seeds from them and have been very pleased with them. I get all my grains from Azure Standard and so much more. I'm building more and more on what I get from them. So anyway, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to fill up these jars with the almonds here, because I really like sliced almonds for using in cookies and breads and cinnamon rolls. And so I'll get these filled up, and then I'll demonstrate at least how I vacuum seal one of those jars. All right, so I have the 3 jars filled up. Oh, and if you want more information about vacuum sealing nuts and seeds and the kind I put up, I'll link to that video. I think I did it a year ago in the description box down below. But I will say very quickly that vacuum sealing your nuts and seeds for long-term storage is an excellent way, and don't give in to all the fear mongering. I've been doing this for many years. It keeps them from going rancid by vacuum sealing them. Especially if you live in a hotter climate and you don't have a cool storage area, vacuum sealing is going to help them last so much longer in your food storage and prevent that rancidity that can happen otherwise. Now, for this kind of jar, this is what we call a lug lid. You just put, and you're going to do this whichever kind of lid you're going to use. You just put that on just enough that you can turn it like that. You don't want it on super tight. It's basically the same way you would use a Tatler lid when you put the band on. You don't crank it down. You just put it on enough that the jar turns, and it's got to be on a smooth surface that it will turn easily. And then what I use is the vacuum chamber that Patrick makes. So this was the very first one he made back in 2020 when you couldn't get a hold of the food saver tops like this, which this is what whenever I'm doing canning jars, I only use the food saver tops and my brake bleeder. But whenever I've got jars like this to seal, because this won't properly fit, in fact, you can't really get that on there at all. If you can get it on there and it's a snug enough fit, you can use this, but it's, in most cases, either the regular or wide mouth like this is not going to work for a lot of your jars, a lot of your recycled jars. So having some kind of chamber to put it in is the way that you have to go when you go to vacuum seal. I just realized the lid got stuck and stayed inside there. So just snug enough that it turns. That's all. Now in this case, I have two, you'll see I have 2 brake bleeders, and I know that this specific one, they're pretty much all the same, but the one I usually have linked is constantly goes in and out of stock. And I think that's because people are using my link all the time. And if it's not in there, go through that link and it's not available, you should get recommendations for something very, very similar. They're all made pretty much the same way. You can even go down to an automotive store you want, because it's an automotive tool. It's a brake bleeder pump. So that's what this is. And it is the best way to do this. So what you want to do, if you're using a chamber like this, and there's various ways that you can go about this if you can't afford to buy our chamber, but if you're interested in purchasing one of these, just email me at raincountryhomestead@gmail.com. I'll send you the full product and price list and how to order. Oh, the other thing, I'll be linking to the video that I did a few years ago when Patrick first came up with these, because you couldn't, in 2020, it was near impossible to buy these, which is why he came out with this idea. And a lot of people were trying to figure, I can't get them. And then when they'd look on eBay, they were like $70 to $100 for a set of them, which is insane. Now you can get them cheaper than what you could before 2020. Okay, so let's go ahead and use this chamber. I'll be linking down below to a more detailed video I did a few years ago on how to use the vacuum chamber. But I'm just going to show you real quickly. So you see I have this jar here. and it's got the little button on it, so that's why I picked this one. You don't want to crank your lid on real tight because you got to be able to pull the air out of the jar itself. So if it's on there too tight, it's not going to be able to pull the air out of the jar. And then you want to tilt the jar and then just carefully put it down in there. Put your lid on and make sure it's on nice and tight. Otherwise, if you hear air escaping or the needle on your pump, whatever kind of pump you're using, if it has a needle and it's not moving, that means you don't have it on tight enough. So, and there's air escaping somewhere. So sometimes if I see this thing stop moving, I listen to see if there's any air leaking out. So I'm going to go ahead and pump this up, and as I go I want to explain that what you want to do is you want to rest if you're doing this manually like I am, you want to rest this against the counter, use your whole arm. Don't do this or it's just going to put too much wear and tear on your wrist and your joints. But using your whole arm, you'll feel it mostly in your forearm, is going to be a lot easier. This typically takes, with continual pumping, about 30 seconds to get that all the way up there. Now, really, what you just want to watch for is if that needle stops moving, that means it's pulled out all the air from both the jar and from the chamber. But if you still see it moving, I just keep going at least until it gets to 400 or 15, which is usually it's pointing straight up and down by that point. And it looks like it's done. So we're going to go ahead and open the chamber. You'll hear the air escape. And I heard a subtle little tink of the lid, which tells me alone, that sound tells me that it did in fact seal. And I can tell that it is, I don't know if you can, it's kind of hard because it's black. It is indented a little bit more. So it is well sealed. And then while I'm at it, let me explain real quickly, how do you open it? Well, the same way you would open the jar in the first place. So I just use a spoon, a nice big, a spoon that I know I'm not going to bend accidentally. I get up under the rim. You hear that? And just do that. And there we go. Now, a couple other ideas that you can use if you're wanting to vacuum seal in jars and your Food Saver tops will not fit. Food Saver used to make their own kind of chamber that you could do that same thing with. You can put your jars down in. You can look and see if there's any of those, if they're still selling them, or maybe even find those used. Some people, if they're wanting to do larger jars and they can't afford to either make or buy our half-gallon chamber, they will use a pressure canner. So what they do is they put the jars into the pressure canner and seal it up, put the lid on. Obviously, now you're not going to can it. Don't get me wrong here. You're not putting water in there. But what they'll do is they'll use an electric pump and put that over the vent pipe of the canner and then vacuum the air out that way. So you got to keep in mind, whenever you're vacuum sealing inside of any kind of chamber, the first step that's happening is it's pulling the air out of the jar. Then it's pulling the air out of whatever type of chamber or that you're using. So the bigger it is, the longer it's going to take for it to seal. The more empty the chamber is, the longer it's going to take. So if I can put smaller jars like this in here, but it's going to take longer. If you can stack them as long as they'll fit height-wise and it'll still seal, but it's going to take a lot longer because there's going to be a lot more airspace. So these are all the things you got to take into consideration. So if you have weak hands and arms, you may want to look at having some kind of electric pump. There's various different kinds, and I know a lot of people have bought some from like Harbor Freight and so on. And it could be $100 and something, or you can use a Food Saver. I gave up on Food Saver because they just kept breaking down on me. So there's various different things. Again, go check out my options for vacuum sealing in the description box down below that video. And so I think I covered everything I was going to cover on that. And I hope this just kind of gives you an idea of what you can do, how you can recycle your different jars and bottles and make the most of what you already have on hand, and also to preserve your stuff for a longer period of time. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.